what's going on, guys? It's J-Mass. I'm currently in Fort Revere Park in the town of Hull, Massachusetts, which is a peninsula located in the South Shore, just south of Boston. So I'm actually here today because this is a really cool site. So Fort Revere was a military fort constructed in 1776 for use during the Revolutionary War, and it was also later used in both World Wars. So it's a really cool place. Although the fort is decommissioned today and largely abandoned, it's still structurally sound, and you can go check it out. You can go through the tunnels, you can go on top of the battery rams and get some beautiful views of the Boston Harbor. I really love it, so I figured today I would take you guys to one of America's most interesting decommissioned forts, Fort Revere Park in Hull, Massachusetts. And here it is, guys, Fort Revere in Hull, Massachusetts. So like I said, this fort was built in 1776 during the height of the American Revolution, and it was primarily used during that time. It actually fell into disrepair shortly after the war. It wasn't actually used in the War of 1812, but it was once again used during World War I and World War II. I believe it was 1898 when they actually took the fort back again for military use. So there was a bit of a lull period in the early to mid 1800s where this fort wasn't being used. And then once again, after World War II, the fort fell into disrepair and it's currently decommissioned and open for the public to view. So if you take a look here, we're actually at Telegraph Hill, which is the highest point in the town of Hull. And right over there is the second highest hill, Allerton Hill. And as you can probably see, like I said, you get some beautiful views of the Boston Harbor. But I figured, you know what, let's go take a look at Fort Revere. Maybe go check out some of the tunnels and get some more great views. Now this right here is another thing I want to show you guys. This is a memorial for the French military, because curiously, a bunch of French soldiers were also stationed at Fort Revere, and they were stationed here in the American Revolution. Now, if you remember from history class, the French were actually on our side in the American Revolution. They were one of our first allies, and they were stationed here at Fort Revere in Hull. So it wasn't just American soldiers who used this military fort, but our French allies at the time who helped us fight the British. And right here is the staircase that leads us down to Fort Revere. And another view of the fort itself. You can probably tell that there's tunnels and entrances that go inside it. And that's what we're gonna do. Okay, and here we are entering the first tunnel. Now obviously, as you can see, there's just graffiti everywhere. This whole thing is covered. And if you've ever been to any abandoned forts in New England or just anywhere, you'll often see that these halls are just covered. They're basically art galleries for graffiti artists. You got that Smiling Friends reference? I mean, this is cool though. So I've actually been to Fort Revere a couple times. I don't know how many times, but maybe like 4 or 5. It is a really cool fort and probably one of my favorites. It is super dark though, I will say, inside. The deeper you go, the darker it gets. As you could probably say is the case for most of these forts. What always amazed me was how these were utilized during the wars that they were taking part in. So during the American Revolution, when this was active, I'm almost curious, what was going on inside these halls? Were soldiers constantly stationed inside? Was ammunition and weapons stationed inside? It's pretty curious to think about, especially today. We have electricity and such, but back then I assume they had like candles and stuff in here because it is pretty dark. And once again, our entrance back out into the open. So up there, if you were wondering, that was actually a water tower originally. And currently it's closed. You can't go up there, but it also does have an observation deck, which I wish we could access. You could probably get some amazing views up there. Another cool thing about Fort Revere Park is you can actually climb up these. the batteries, I think they're called. As you can see, the stairs are like crumbling. Not in the best shape, but... And here we are on top. So I figured I'd take a quick break from going inside the tunnels and take a little walk on top of the fort. As you can see, I'm currently standing on top of Fort Revere. And one thing I really like about this fort is that it's all like underground, mainly, you know, hidden under Telegraph Hill. So you have all of those plants and grass and soil like on top of the forts. So I can only imagine back in the, you know, 1700s, or both world wars, this fort was probably like pretty well hidden, you know, because it was all about stealth. So it's pretty cool checking that out. Okay, once again, we're gonna enter inside the fort. This is another section. And I will say, you know, it's not in terrible condition. Obviously, there's a lot of broken cinder block and brick. So it's not stellar, but the condition's really not that bad for a 1776 created fort, you know what I mean? Now, obviously, you got a lot of your standard graffiti, you got the satanic symbols, you know what I mean? But still, it's cool to check out. I just tripped on that. Oh, this is cool. So it looks like there's this big room in here. And then if you look right here, there's a chimney. I don't know if it's a chimney, but that's pretty cool. A little fireplace. It almost makes me wonder if people actively use that fireplace today, you know what I mean? So that's actually where we just were a minute ago. And if you look over here, there's another tunnel. I mean, this thing is huge and it goes on. There's so many entrances inside. I'm already getting a bit disoriented. There's also a few of these false entrances, which I'm kind of curious what these are for. Like it looks like it leads somewhere, but it just kind of ends. I don't know, pretty interesting. This area is kind of cool. It has a couple rooms that aren't connected to the other halls. So, you know, you got like a small room like this. And then if we go outside, there's another one right here. This one also has a fireplace. Oh, that's cool. That's a view into the main hall behind us, which we'll check out later. And then of course you got another fireplace here. I mean, this place really is just sprawling. There's so many rooms and tunnels. It's like a maze. I assume it's easy to get lost, you know? Okay, here we are entering the actual bulk of the interior of Fort Revere. I mean, once again, this place is huge inside. Also, just a little minor difference from where we originally started. You can also see that the brick material is different. Like here, they're using clay brick, you know, orange in color. That first tunnel we were in, it was all white. So they use different materials each time. Yeah, this place is massive. Why don't we go back up again and see what's up there? Okay, once again, we're on top of Fort Revere, and you can see the view is just beautiful. So like I said earlier, the town of Hull is actually a peninsula. So we're currently on a peninsula that extends out into the Boston Harbor. That's why we're surrounded by water on all sides. And it is really cool. If you're curious what those are over there, that's actually the Boston Harbor Islands. which you can, I believe Boston has tour boats that go over there. Then of course you got this huge cemetery here, Allerton Island. And right over there is a private island for, I assume, really rich people. It's cool though. And once again, Fort Revere here. So obviously, if you know your history, you'll know that World War I and World War II didn't really carry over to the New England area, fighting that is. So obviously this fort was more for defense than anything. But during the American Revolution, that was another story. I believe there were, I don't know exactly, and I'll put historical facts on the screen, but I believe there was at least some sort of fighting that occurred here, at least naval. So this fort definitely had an offensive, well, a defensive and an offensive purpose for the American Revolution. I assume that it stationed many soldiers here in case of British attacks, because again, this is really close to Boston, which was a major city during the Revolutionary War. And it's also crazy to think about how old this thing is. I mean, this was founded right when America declared independence. So this is a super old structure. Once again, entering a tunnel. So I gotta say that when it comes to abandoned locations, military forts like this are probably my favorite. I love abandoned forts. Fort Revere is obviously a favorite of mine. I would say my all-time favorite, I don't know if you guys have ever been, is called Fort Wetherill in Jamestown, Rhode Island. Love that place, and I really hope to get a video out there soon. I love it. It's like this, but like 2 times bigger. It's massive. So when it comes to like abandoned military forts, you know, naval, seaside forts, those are definitely a favorite of mine. I have a soft spot for those. I love exploring them. And there's something about all the graffiti on the walls. Just gives it a very eerie feeling, which I love. But it's really cool here. I love it. And also here, like I showed you earlier, you got some more dead-end rooms. Now this one's kind of interesting. So you also got a fireplace like we did earlier, but you got these things, which I don't necessarily know what they were used for. I don't know, seating or benches, not sure, but broken window right there. And of course you got another one of these iron bar windows. It almost makes me wonder if that was just like intentional or if that was some sort of prison. Because you have to think too, this was during wartime when it was used. They probably had POWs here. So it almost makes me wonder if those were jail cells, you know, to keep prisoners of war. And that's pretty much about it for the interior of Fort Revere. Obviously, pretty big place, but it's just a huge maze of tunnels and cells and rooms, and you could spend a decent amount of time here exploring everything. It is really cool. So one fun fact I want to give you guys about that island over there, which I said earlier is currently for more wealthy residents of Hull. That's Spinnaker Island, and it was actually used for more interesting purposes. So even though this fort was pretty much decommissioned after World War II, Spinnaker Island had a really important role during the Cold War. It was actually used as a radar and missile control system in the 1950s. And I believe that anti-aircraft missiles were actually held there, specifically Nike missiles. So it's really interesting to think about the major military presence that was at Hull, especially over there. It didn't just extend to Fort Revere, but even outside of it too. So one thing I want to show you guys, if you're curious where exactly we're located, this sign shows us perfectly. So this is the town of Hull, this whole peninsula, and that is exactly where we are at Fort Revere. And as you can see, the whole Boston Islands area, the Boston Harbor Islands, has tons of forts. I mean, these were crucial during wartime. Basically, to protect the city of Boston, we had all of this defense here. And here is a better up-close view of the area. And here it is today, Fort Revere Park. Decommissioned and abandoned, but still a beautiful site and really fun to explore. Now, if you remember where I started the video, it was actually at that tower over there. That was a water tower that served the Fort Revere area. And they got a little information about it here. This was cool. It actually served 118,000 gallons of water in a 20-foot diameter steel tank. So that basically served all of the troops at Fort Revere Park. Very cool. And guys, that was Fort Revere in Hull, Massachusetts. One of my favorite abandoned military forts to visit. Now, this place was built in 1776, used throughout the American Revolution, then later used from 1898 until it was decommissioned in 1947. Really important piece of American military history. I love checking it out. I'm glad I brought you guys along for the ride, and I'll see you on the next New England adventure. I've been J-Mass, Fort Revere in Hull, Massachusetts. Catch you guys later.